A good afternoon, our dear viewers of Chat Space Show on Civic Space TV. My name is Matanda Abubaker, and I'm standing in for Masesa Demian. As usual, every week we bring you distinguished panelists to weigh in on the issues that have come up in politics and in civic space, among others. Today, for the past 1 week, there's a discussion that has been going on in the country surrounding the issue of bail. Article 23, Sub-Article 6 of our Constitution allows individuals who have been arrested on different issues to be released on bail as their investigations go on. The basis of this article is in Article 28, which presumes every suspect as innocent until when they are either found guilty or when they plead guilty. And Article 44, the right to a fair hearing is one of those rights that cannot be, that are non-derogable. And so the basis of this article is what has formed the discussion. But guess who has brought up this discussion? None other than the president. Last Wednesday, while swearing in new judges, the president once again, as he had done so in the past, argued that granting bail to particularly suspects of capital offences is a provocation. He says that this has led to too many vices, including mob justice, as criminals, as he calls them, are arrested and then released on bail. And you know, that provokes citizens to take the law into their own hands because they think the state is not working. Expectedly, civil society, human rights activists, and politicians have come out from different sections to argue that that is yet another law for the rule of law in this country, arguing that bail, application for bail, is a constitutional right, and someone is presumed innocent until they plead guilty, and therefore holding them beyond or not allowing them or granting them bail is to punish them before court even pronounces itself. Yesterday, this issue was tabled in the caucus of the NRM, and on the face of it, the reports we got was that it was rejected. The president gave the members 14 days to mull over the idea, and we wait to see what the members will come out with. Opposition MPs have warned their colleagues not to budge and move from the position of opposing this idea. Interestingly, there are also press reports that reported this as a clash between the Chief Justice and the president, because during the 4th annual Hon Monicah Memorial Lecture, the Chief Justice advised the President that bail is at the discretion of judicial officers, but they also execute their discretion judiciously. The Chief Justice actually said the judicial officers not just wake up and make a decision depending on the side of the bed. The President insisted that the Constitutional Commission report showed that Ugandans actually did not want bail for capital offences, but somehow the former Chief Justice Benjamin Odoki, who was the chairperson of this report, insisted on it, and it found its way into the law. And so it looks like the president is really putting up a spirited fight. We have a very diverse panel today to put these things in perspective. Where is it going? Is it a decoy? Why all of a sudden are we concerned so much about bail? Of course, not to mention the MPs who have been released and rearrested in very dramatic ways, in effect, rendering their bail allowances negative. On my extreme right, I have Honorable Monicah Amoding, a name that you all know, a former member of parliament from youth to constituency. Honorable Monicah, it's a pleasure to have you on this show, and also a lawyer at that.
Thank you, Mr. Matanda. Yours is also a household name, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether you belong to the other family that, I hear about, highly political. I'm happy to be here. Yeah.
Yes. And, you know, to balance it immediately, we have Bishop Rugyendo. Arinaitwe, Bishop, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. I am not a lawyer, and I can see I am surrounded by lawyers and legal.
And Mr. Godber is suggesting that you're a member of the other group.
I don't understand but thank you for inviting me, Mr. Matanda. Are you related to Dennis Matanda?
No,
He's my friend.
only by name. Yes, yeah. But it's a pleasure to have you.
Pleasure is all mine, sir.
Yes, and of course our resident panelist, Sarah Bireete, Executive Director of the Center for Constitutional Governance, a member of the
I was a resident panelist.
Society.
I went on sabbatical.
You went on sabbatical. Welcome back. We hope we're able now to have you consistently.
Thank you.
Yes, but Sarah here threw in a spanner when she said she's a member of the Evil Society. It's civil society or evil society? But Sarah, it's always a pleasure to have you.
No, it is, yeah, thank you, Matanda. It's civil society, but some people have pronunciation challenges.
Okay.
It's a sound challenge.
Interesting. And the Associate Director, I'm now well informed, no longer Executive Director, Associate Director of GLISS, Mr. Godber Tumushabe. We are honored to have you on board.
Thank you, Matanda. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I will start with you, Hon Monicah Amoding, as I would say senior legislator, having served in Parliament for 2 terms.
Yeah.
Yes, so you have heard the President. He says this issue of bail, particularly for capital offences, is a provocation. You are provoking the population to take the law into their own hands, and I think provoking him.
Well, first of all, I want to say that having this discussion at this time by the President seems to be, to say the least, I think it is appalling. It is also a bit, I can say, it is a bit appalling. Let me just leave it at that, because now, if the President is taking us back to the Odoke report, the issues of mob justice, the issues to deal with societies that were formerly, we can largely say, associated with the African chieftaincies, so to speak, where law was not, available that much. And we are growing democracy. We are now in the millennium. Mob justice, yes, was a factor of the past in societies where rule of law was not established. And going forward to where we are now, I think it is a matter that is quite discouraging at this point in time in our democracy.
Honorable, the President actually raised current examples in Arua, in Gulu, where people have taken the law into their hands, and he says this was because they saw people who have committed murder
being let
back
go
in the society after just
the reason is because of the systems which are not operational, which are not effective in terms of access to justice. And for the President to come up with this matter of bail, it is not a new thing. It is not only exclusive to Uganda, because bail is an international principle, or it's premised on international frameworks. And these frameworks are practiced by all countries that are signatory to the International Covenants on Civil and Political Rights, the UDHR, and also the African Charter on Human and People's Rights in Africa. So I think that it's not an exclusive matter, and he raises it as if it is only for the Ugandan population to consider. If I looked at the Bible, I was actually reflecting on it, and I saw that bail is a factor that is in the Bible as well, in Genesis 3:13. Because in there, the Lord himself, God, came to Eden, where these people, Adam and Eve, had committed sin. And he did not straight away convict them. He said, what have you done? In essence, he was giving them an opportunity to defend themselves, to prove their case beyond reasonable doubt. So I think that in my circles of religion, bail is part and parcel of the Bible as well. And so we cannot allow this conversation, maybe, and I think that the lawyers who are here, there is no lawyer who can sanely, discuss this matter in support of the President. It would be actually appalling that such a person would do that.
You'll be shocked on who will present it. Allow me, Honorable.
Yes,
Yeah,
it will be the Attorney General, probably.
Yes, I'll be coming back to you in a while, but allow me to go to Bishop now. You have heard the words the whole thing has been described as being appalling. And Honorable seems to suggest that doing away with bail for those cases, like denying people their right to a fair hearing. What are your own thoughts?
Of course, first of all, like I confessed, I am in the midst of lawyers whom I'm very sure will never support a move like this. It's not going to happen as long as the law exists as is. The way I understand it from my rudimentary way of being close to lawyers and, and some of them relatives, that's how I think that the law is a law, and once it is out of the law, it is illegal. So, but my thoughts to this issue really are coming from the fact that, for me, I think I represent the voice of society. You people are in the courts of law, wearing your wigs, but we, the journalists, I think, have the opportunity to have feelers both ways. One, we report these stories in court, but we also were able to listen to the people and pick their feelings. I'll give an example, for example. When I was at Makerere University, the very day we were finishing, we were just dancing in the Freedom Square. That incident of the 3 students who were shot, the 2 were lawyers actually. One of them, a very, very close friend of mine from, I think, Uganda. We were together in Nkrumah Hall, and that very afternoon, it was a Thursday, I remember. Thursday used to be chicken time at Makerere. And up to today, yes. And we jumped over the tables and said, this is our last chicken. We must make sure we grab the best piece. And then he says, by the way, I am going to town to attend the law dinner. There was a law dinner, I think, for law students. And then the next day we would meet again. We had promised we would meet again and then discuss about how we're going to liberate our poor mothers in the village, because we had finished. The boy did not return. He was one of the people who was accidentally shot in that thing. The parents have never, up to this point in time, recovered. Even if the suspect was released the other day, the convict was released, you still feel the mother has never recovered. And I think, for me, this is where now politics and the law tend to clash. And I don't think Museveni, in his right mind, would really say that actually there should never be bail. I don't think so. Probably maybe he's being misquoted. In my view, I think
is he the wrong mind?
I want to see. For me, I want to understand it from this point, from the point that there should be a meeting of minds to say that convicts or suspects of capital offences of a murderous nature, for example, should be probably held for a certain amount of time. I have a feeling that probably this could be a result or pressure from the investigative agencies, for example. For instance, I was telling BBC this morning about this same issue. 48 hours, is it enough, for example, for somebody to say Rugyendo indeed really committed this murder? And also, I also want to speak from the point of view of an experienced jailbird. I've been arrested many times. I've been arrested, I think, 15 times. 14 of those bonded out of police, but the 15th.
And we mounted campaigns.
The 15th, I was taken in Narfeni and all this, and then I understood from the point of view of a suspect, when you're innocent, really, the law is very clear, and I think the way the instrument stands really helps even those who are innocent to not fall for the guillotine. And the lawyers, really, I really give it to them from that point, and I will never blame anybody. But what is happening is, like I said, the clash of politics and the law. And also, from my other rudimentary understanding is that I think Uganda and probably much of Africa follow the Commonwealth law, all right? Yeah. The Commonwealth law is in such a way, is structured in such a way that you are innocent until proved guilty. Yeah. That means that the victim have a lesser chance to prove you guilty. And then the French one is different.
Yeah.
You are guilty until you prove yourself.
Yes.
innocent.
Just-
And so that's for me, that's my interpretation.
Yeah,
So,
so-
but the clash here, I think where Museveni is coming from, is that then when it comes to Africa, the African law, if the authority exists,
What
is
is
a
mob
different one.
justice.
It wasn't mob
Mob
justice, I
justice,
think. It was an eye for an eye. It was, I think, modeled on the on the law of Moses. You know, you commit this, and this is the punishment. It's very well known. And also, we need to understand it from the background where Museveni comes from, the military background. In the army, in the UPDF, you kill somebody. That's why I think even when these soldiers go out of their way and shoot, say, civilians, even before the police reaches them, they have committed suicide because they know what is going to happen. And I think that is why you have probably list cases in the military of where you have these characters roaming around.
Okay.
And so my thoughts really rotate around the fact that there is a conflict between logic and the law, politics and the law, and I think we need to get the facts when I come back here. I want to show you some
What is the
facts that I
recommendation
picked.
from
My recommendation for me,
Honorable, we shall come
I think we
to,
shall come to that.
the
Let's come to
recommendation.
that later. Let me
Yes,
just first.
I was-
I've just given you just a picture
I was
of
hoping-
where I think the president is coming from,
Yeah.
and what our law says,
Yes.
and then also what we normal civilians feel.
Okay, thank
feel
you.
about some of these decisions
Yeah.
that the courts of law take just because the law exists, not because there is a fundamental belief that somebody is actually a perpetual convict. I mean,
Okay,
a perpetual
I can
offender.
see that Sarah and Godber are itching as we are submitting.
The resident.
I'm going to start with Godber.
Hey.
You seem to itch fast. Yeah, you seem to itch fast. And so you're hearing possibly where the president
They
coming
think we are
from.
not land. That's the problem.
Yeah.
But we also know these things.
No.
Yeah, Rugyendo is saying, well, the law is there and provides for all these things. But there's also society. And there's a feeling that, courts are releasing criminals back into society and the people are getting
Now, I
tired.
was actually chipping in just to correct Rugyendo on where you said the victim is supposed to prove. In criminal law,
No, it's not. The victim is not protected.
Has limited
Has limited chances.
Yes. So in criminal law, the victim actually is not the one.
I know that.
Oh yeah. So
I
it is
understand
the
it.
state
Understand
to
it.
prove that.
I wanted to educate us the difference between the Commonwealth law and then this where the other.
Don't worry.
So let me explain that the rules about bail, because there has been a mischaracterization of the right to bail.
apply.
That we are dealing with the right to apply
Yes.
for bail. The responsibility or the action to grant bail is a discretionary power on the judge.
Yes.
And there are established rules of practice and guidelines on how bail is granted. So when you go through the cases, there are certain rules that have been established over time that the judge will rely on to be able to grant bail. So I think it's important for our listeners to understand that the right is about the right to apply,
Not the bail.
not
itself.
to the bail itself. For the bail to be granted to you, you must fulfill, certain conditions must be fulfilled as court deems fit. So I think that's, for me, that's important, point number one. Point number two is the whole issue of the presumption of innocence. The whole principle that every citizen is presumed innocent until proven guilty. And that rule, both the presumption of innocence and the right to apply for bail, they are not designed to protect the criminals. They are designed to protect the innocent. I think that's a very important point that we need to understand. That I've been telling people that in my first year of law school, yeah. So in my first year of law school, I was one of those people privileged to be taught by one of the most leading professors in criminal law, the late Professor Abraham Kiapi. And he used to refer, one of the mandatory readings was an essay written by Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. In that essay, Mwalimu Nyerere argued and said it is better to let 99 criminals go free if in the process of convicting and imprisoning them, you ended up imprisoning an innocent person unfairly. Because that action of imprisoning an innocent person, it has implications for you as a human being. The trauma that you go through, that you can be imprisoned for the next 6 months because the state wants to do investigation, and then after 6 months, we find Rugyendo was actually innocent. So the law is protecting, the state drops the charges.
No compensation.
The law is protecting your innocence. And Mwalimu Nyerere argued, and I think correctly so, that you'd rather let the other 99 go free because this person needs to be protected. Thirdly, I think it's the statements by the president has also led to, created a misconception that almost every killing is a murder. In our laws, every offense, every crime is defined by the law. So in other words, there are certain ingredients that constitute murder. So when you kill a person, from the legal perspective, we don't call that murder. Of course. But there are also different degrees because the law has defined what murder is. That's why if you go out there and you are driving and you knock a person dead, that's not murder. You've killed someone. But according to our law, one is that you have to prove that someone was killed. 2, you have to prove that that person was killed by the accused. And 3, you have to prove that actually the accuser had the intention to kill. That's what you call murder. So the idea that, so that's why, and that's why it is important that there is a due process to be able to confirm that this person killed the victim and he killed that victim with an intention. You can imagine there are accidents that happen. So
actually, when he was talking about the account of Makerere, he said one of those who were killed accidentally.
Yes,
I heard him
exactly.
say that.
So there are accounts that happen. But you can imagine these cases that we've had. So for us, this debate on bail being championed by the president, it has 2 negative connotations. One is that from the time this constitution, the 1995 constitution, was enacted, the president has been at the forefront of dismantling all the safeguards in the constitution. Because I look at the presumption of innocence and the right to apply for bail as a safeguard. These are real guards of justice for the people who can wrongly be accused of these kinds of offenses. The president has dismantled all the safeguards around political transition. The president has been at the forefront of dismantling the entire decentralization system, basically winding back everything. So that's, for me, I look at it in that context. But lastly, if you take a few cases, and the most one that is really prominent and still, fresh in our minds, is the case of Nicholas Opio, who is picked up and for over 6 months is taken to court, and the state comes and says investigations are still going on for 6 months. After 6 months, after the judge threatened to throw out the case, the prosecutor the DPP comes and says, we are withdrawing the case. I think that the president is trying to pass responsibility, probably pursue a more politically or a driven agenda. Because the president, as a person who controls the budget, who controls the institutions of the executive, he needs to focus on where the problem is, where it is about the capacity to investigate, the capacity to prosecute, and you bring cases that are complete before the law. But the idea that anybody of sound mind thinks that you should just arrest Ugandans, lock them up, and proceed at your convenience the way they did with Nicholas Opio, I think it's something that is outrageous in my view, and I feel very bad that this is something being championed by the president, because he has the capacity to make sure that the institutions of prosecution, of investigation, of forensics and others can be properly resourced and capacitated to be able to bring cases to court.
Thank you. Thank you, Godber. Allow me now to go to Sarah, who has also been itching. Yes, Sarah, you have heard it all. What's your take?
No, I think maybe what I can bring in to this, the preamble of this discussion is what is the origin of bail? Because the president has promoted a narrative as if bail is a Ugandan thing. Like Honorable Amoding rightly said, Uganda practices common law doctrine. Before you bring in the questions, let me first state quickly.
No, not a question, but just on that one. Actually, the president seems to think bail is a foreign thing because he asked, what is the rush? Whom are you trying to
No. That one can only, can only be evidence of ignorance. But let me first talk about bail. Yeah, because Uganda practices common law doctrine.
Yes.
But if you look at how European countries, modernized and they, coded bail, because the common law laws are coded, written down in detail with ingredients and punishments. So before the 17th century, the chiefs and the people who were in charge of judicial administration had two aspects of the law, but mainly it was the retributive, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But there was also, with modernization, then they tended to restoration, law that restores the damage, but also reforms the offenders of the law. It was not written down until half of the 17th century, when they decided, and bail was originally called BORB, B-O-R-B. So they decided that if you commit a crime, you come before the judicial officer with the sureties, and mainly a form of security, normally money, and the money would be equivalent to the damage you've caused. So in that century, the bail provided two aspects. One was no costs on pre-detention, because if you remand people, our prisons are full. I saw the spokesperson last night. You remand somebody for 1 year on trumped up charges, the state is spending on them. So that's the cost. The
taxpayers are spending on them.
Yes, the taxpayers are spending on them. So that's the cost they wanted to avoid. The second advantage was that there is money, compensatory money, in form of bail money. So for the damage caused, there is already money in the hands of court. And normally that bail money would be equivalent to a fine you would pay for the offense you've committed. So those are two aspects of quick justice. Save taxpayers' money, but also provide money for compensation in case the person is guilty. But it also provided the safeguard for a free trial, a fair trial. Later, when kings came, 3 consecutive monarchs used the state power to abuse these safeguards, and it almost pushed England on a brink of a civil war. That's when King John, in 1215, signed a Magna Carta rules. And Article 39 of Magna Carta rules was no one should be considered guilty before they face a fair trial. Generally, they are the guarantees of due process.
Of the law.
Nobody should be punished before evidence, before fair trial. Nobody should be made, by then they had punishments, including banishing people. So nobody should be, not be accorded a fair trial. And among those components were the rights, the guarantees of due process, and the right to bail. So we are now, Uganda, reversing this debate
Under international law.
Total 15. We are reversing the clock. To put it total 15 in fourth industrial revolution.
Wow.
Magna Carta rules graduated into the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and Articles 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 10, 11 are all on a right to a fair hearing, due process, equality before the law, non-discrimination, and guarantees of personal liberty. When you come to our Constitution, Article 23 and 28, but also Article 20, Clause 2, which prohibits the state from attempting to violate any of the fundamental rights and freedoms. So this debate is in contempt of our Constitution, is in contempt of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, is in contempt of UN principles, is in contempt of the African Union Charter, is in contempt of humanity. And we shouldn't have it.
How?
Wow.
It's a full lecture.
Yeah, I know. And
In 10 minutes.
I'm now.
I was just learning.
I'm going to come back to you, Honorable. Earlier on, Godber did mention that before someone gets bail, there is a process and there are established principles. And I was about to ask him, but now that we have you, you could maybe help us, you know, so sort of further to break down this bail thing. What considerations do judges make before releasing someone? Because the exchange between the president and the chief justice, the president seemed to be saying the judges are failing
To do
at
their
performing that role, and the chief justice is insisting that no, they have the discretion, but they also have to carry it out judiciously. In fact, we went ahead to use that very fun analogy that they don't just wake up and say this one should be released, this one should. So what are
Of course, the president's discussion is coming from his worry of the fact that Ugandans now seem to be suggesting that the bail is a right and it is an entitlement. So he was very emphatic on the fact that it's a right. I mean, he was very emphatic on that fact that Ugandans are misabusing or misusing this right, and he seems to suggest that now it is seen as a right which any criminal is entitled to. So, but I think the Chief Justice was also trying to give the discussion, you know, to expound on it and emphasize the status of the law. In essence, that it's a right that an accused can exercise to apply, but not an entitlement automatically to bail. So in that perspective, of course, the ball was thrown to the work that the judicial officers do. But of course, for the benefit of our listeners, bail can be got at different levels. There are the judicial officers at magisterial level also can give bail based on certain, you know, offenses that they are limited towards. And then, of course, at high court for capital offenses. And a criminal or somebody who is convicted also can appeal and get bail during the process of waiting. So there is pre-trial bail.
Yes.
During the process of trial as well. Pre-trial, I think, is bond sometimes.
No, bond is police.
Bond is at police, but at pre-trial,
Yeah.
one is
that period before
Once
hearing.
Before
you're
hearing.
committed to trial,
Yes.
you can only
and
get
then
bail.
when the person is charged and you are appealing, you are also entitled to bail, to apply at least. You know, so the conversation now, of course, is whether it should be seen as a human right, because also then these accused persons or the convicts are still entitled to some basic human rights, even when you have, you know, your liberties a little bit restricted. So I think that the consideration that, of course, the judicial officers have is based on largely about 3 grounds. And it is assessed based on, you know, on different grounds. It is a case-by-case, you know, consideration. One of the considerations is that whether this person, if Amoding is accused, for example, is she likely to abscond from coming back to court? And when I was looking at the issue of Sewanyana and the others, of course, they are, you know, accused of capital offenses. Very, very, you know, big offenses, terrorism and others, murder. But they were still given bail at some, you know, at one level. And I think the reason is why they are members of parliament. They are unlikely to, evade coming back to, court. And so that particular factor is very, very critical for any judicial officer to consider. The other is maybe a grave illness. Somebody is suffering from some other complications that would require immediate attention. And several other, you are a good citizen. The considerations range. They depend on the offense committee.
You have
but
no
also
formal criminal record.
No formal criminal record, and So I think the fear that the president, for me, when I was reflecting on it, it's also a check and a balance in a democratic government that we assume to be subscribing to. Citizens of Uganda collectively put their rights together and say, okay, we shall be governed by this government, but the terms and conditions are this law, and this law is protecting our civil rights, other rights in the Bill of Rights that we subscribe to in Chapter 4. So where the president now comes as one person asking Parliament to make changes on the Bill of Rights, it's a big discussion and it's a big issue, and that is why it's a big concern by many people in the country, that this is something. And I'm happy that the members of Parliament at first instance in the caucus yesterday seemed to suggest that it is an issue that we should not even be discussing now. Hopefully they will maintain that status and ensure that that is maintained in the Constitution as a checks and balances in terms of ensuring that the rule of law and the due process is followed, and also to emphasize the fact that Parliament is the lawmaking body. The president should not chip away these powers all the time simply because NRM is the ruling party, and therefore we can agree in the caucus and then deal with these rights as and when we deem fit, and when maybe we have a political question to resolve. Because I think at the background of this discussion are these political, politically trumped up charges, which I think is not good for the country. So this conversation, I think citizens of Uganda need to engage with the members of Parliament when they come to the constituencies, because they've been sent for 14 days to consult on this matter. But it is a matter that clearly, any democratic leader should be able to see.
Yeah, but now that you mentioned the people, the president actually cites about 2 incidences to show that he's not acting for himself, but for the people. One, he says, when you read the reports prior to the making of the Constitution, Ugandans did not want this thing. 2, he says, Ugandans are complaining, and some of them taking the law into their hands. So it looks like Ugandans don't want
are okay
this.
with it. No, I think the president is misleading the public.
So how can you use examples of 2 incidences? and those incidences, I can quickly blame them on failure of police to keep law and order. That is lawlessness. So how can you pick 2 examples of lawlessness and you use them to debate a globally resolved
issue? And also, the examples that he uses, well, I haven't had a recent benefit to read that report, but he should be honest, because I think that Ugandans do know that the president is trying to solve, I think, political questions using the law, which is a problem in these current times. And someone who is a Ugandan who is comfortable thinking we are still in a democracy, maybe Rugyendo is still comfortable.
Rugyendo is
but we are quickly slipping away
I'm not a politician.
to what we call military dictatorship, certainly, because then in such kind of systems, the rights of individuals don't matter, and they can be twisted as and when, the one who holds the power, the lawgiver, feels it is right. So I think this discussion by the president is leading Uganda into temptation. He likes saying that, and he likes warning Ugandans who lead people to temptation, but he himself this time is leading, I think, people to temptation, and I think the president, people need to talk some sense into the president's head that this is an area which really touches every individual Ugandan. And I think that including himself, because the rights, the human rights of an individual are indivisible, inalienable, and also, what is the other aspect? They should not, yes, they are any human being, even if I have not, even if I am a criminal, I've been convicted, there are certain basics that I should be enjoying. And removing this particular principle of innocence before proven guilty is actually dealing away with the entire criminal justice system because it is premised.
That's where it's premised.
That is where it is premised.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable.
Yeah.
Someone suggested on Twitter that actually we should maybe discuss executive immunity.
And remove it.
Yeah,
because
I think the two should go hand in hand.
hand in hand.
We remove bail, we remove immunity. And we roll.
The debate ends there.
Yeah, so
roll.
I will come to you, Rugyendo. You, at particular points after their submissions,
Yes, I've been picking.
you kept saying that you're learning. A lot of things have been
Thank you very
clarified.
much.
Yeah, the answer that bail is important.
Thank you very much. No, I know it is important because I've experienced it.
Yes.
I have benefited. I'm a beneficiary of bail, by the way,
Yes,
for your
yes,
information.
yes, yes.
And actually, at the second application, I remember somebody sheepishly from the state argued that that some of us, like Rugyendo, are dangerous not only to Uganda but to the entire region. That this was a state prosecutor, and I was there in my dog. And it's on record, of course. But of course, yes, I really like the fact that you could trace the fact that these bills of rights, this Bill of Rights has a history, in the Magna Carta.
Magna Carta.
No, the pronunciation for us who have studied Latin. It's Magna Carta. That's Latin.
Okay. Okay, and in English it's Great Charter. Yes.
Yeah, we had to sit the two of you
Yes,
to settle some of these things.
The whole idea is that the human body, the human spirit is sacrosanct. It really imposes every other idea, and for me, I still really agree that first of all, the Banyakwa have a saying that let me translate for her.
Yes.
That,
I'm also associated.
yes, that you when you're a co-wife, you're two women married to one gentleman.
This way, that
When
a stick.
When a stick, I'm giving it good background, better background. When a stick that has a co-husband. Okay.
A stick that your husband
uses to
on
beat
your
your
co-wife.
co-wife. When you see it,
you throw it very far.
very
Because you are next.
Because you never know. It
We
might
don't
beat
even
you.
want co-wives anymore.
So that's the whole idea about this debate. This idea about this debate is, it really is a reflection on the failure to understand that actually anybody can be a victim of this law anytime. I think, like I promised, I would be very interpretive instead. Where is the president, to me, really coming from? I think the discussion needs to focus on why there are complaints in public.
Just a question,
Why are
information.
people
On
not
that?
For
satisfied
gender, as he makes it, this
with the
very
system,
point.
with the system?
Sarah thinks you need to correct
Information
this.
for you to build well this point. Why is it that when people are closer to State House, are charged under seeking bail, the president never raises this debate?
No, I think
Is that so?
Just a moment. I would disagree with you because, from a journalistic point of view,
This
I have
debate should have come at
just
the
a
time
moment.
of Texas.
I have watched.
Yeah.
Listen. I have watched the president talking about this problem of bail since I think 2010 or 2009.
Whenever there is an
Just a
opposition
moment.
person
No,
charged.
no,
Yes.
it's every year actually.
No.
And it's not about the opposition being charged. I think because the point is, you're not going to say that what he wants is only for the opposition, because the moment a referendum.
His immediate
No, many people are actually
If
suggesting.
the law,
His
if the law
immediate
decides
We
that
could
actually
do a
bail
referendum.
should be removed, it touches everybody, including himself. So I don't see really
No, but possibly he thinks
an
he's
individual
immune because he has
benefit,
the.
He has
as the
immunity.
president. But the point is, why would he shield himself? Because at one point he'll get out of this seat.
You
For
see,
me,
planning
I want to give you information. Let me
Yes,
give you
but
information. Let me give you information. For me, at which point? I think 2045. I have heard actually. In fact, this is not just beat about the bush.
Yes.
I have heard that the judicial system, your judicial system that you guys work for, has produced a report that showed that 65% of capital offenders, the ones that are convicted, are repeat offenders. Yes. And just a moment. And 96% of these 65 have jumped bail very many times. So there seems to be a problem that it's the same people, who are convicted, then they're bailed out, and then they commit similar offenses again and again. And
So is the problem
and
there
this
the
is,
right to
and this
apply
is what
for
is
bail?
angering a section of the public, probably a large section or any other sections, as we would say. So I think the discussion needs to focus there. Why? Why do we have this kind of situation? Somebody was saying maybe it's because of the poor system. Yes, I know we have few judges.
Corruption as well.
I know there's corruption, of course, and this corruption, probably, I've always argued with Godber on some forum that, this just really starts from our homes. It's not that it is
From your home,
policy.
not mine.
Our homes where we grow up. The schools we attend, the churches we go to. This country has, I think, a church in each and every parish,
Village.
or village in this country. But corruption keeps skyrocketing. Murders still keep skyrocketing.
Okay, so
And all this.
we are
So
we are
for
about
me-
to go for a break, but just help us link
to link.
that the findings of that report
Yes,
to this
for me, I think
discussion of application for bail.
This is just a moment. This is for me, I think, what is informing this discussion. And I disagree with Sarah when you say this is contempt of the Constitution. I think, let me tell you, laws really are theoretical propositions, because and laws must be discussed. If they cannot be discussed, then that's not a democratic dispensation, in my view. Because the president probably should have woken up and said, I am using my prerogative to say
He doesn't
bail.
have
He
it.
doesn't have the
Probably.
He doesn't have
Where?
it.
I don't know.
Don't mislead the
I'll find out. I'll find out.
No,
I'll find out.
He doesn't have it.
But for me,
Yeah.
But for me, a discussion of this nature is very, very important. Why? Number one, it will probably shoulder responsibility somewhere else, maybe in his bedroom, maybe in his office, maybe in the judiciary for failing to prosecute these cases to their conclusion.
One piece of information before you break.
Maybe to try to find out, what do the public think? What do the lawyers think? Is there a check that we need to probably look at in terms of how the judicial system is? There's been so many issues surrounding the judiciary in this country and how justice is dispensed in this country, and all these have political reverberations. Back to the people who manage the politics in this country. And for me, I think if the discussion goes there,
Yes.
that would be good. But that,
I think
rights should
That
not be
question
exercised.
needs to be answered by Godber.
Yes. Rights should not be exercised.
He will
Rights should
answer
be
it, but I
hidden.
want to-
I think I have a problem with it.
Thank you very
I want
much,
to give
Rugyendo.
one
We
piece
are
of
going for a
information.
break, but we
Just
want-
one minute. 1 minute, because when we go for a break,
Yes.
then viewers might forget. Ndugu Rugyendo has said that 65% of repeat offenders get a bail, then jump bail and are given bail again. I want to inform viewers that on this panel, there are 4 officers of court. It cannot happen that you jump bail and court gives you bail again. It cannot happen.
But this
so
is
please,
this
no,
was produced by the
that's
former
fraudulent.
justice.
Fraudulent? It cannot happen because that is the ground to deny bail in any court.
Yeah.
It
Then it's
cannot
not
happen.
happening.
The chat space show gets heated and deeper, as you can know. But we are going to take a short break, and when we come back,
Once you jump bail,
expect
you
even a
never
hotter
get bail.
discussion. See you soon. Welcome back from the break. Before we went off, the discussion was hot. I can also tell that the area is hot. So now we
When
are
you
back.
have Rugyendo,
And
Sarah,
yeah,
Godber on set.
possibly, I don't know whether we are going to heat up a bit more or cool. But Yes, Mr. Rugyendo, I don't know, have you got the report now?
Not yet. I'll get it.
Yeah, he was just spreading propaganda as usual.
Okay,
Do not spoil my otherwise good reputation.
as chat space, we are very much interested in that report. We shall present it to the viewers. But let me go now to Sarah. Maybe the discussion we are having is not what this discussion we are supposed to be having. Maybe the problems are elsewhere, and you did allude to that. We also know that there are so many people who are on remand and have stayed there 2, 3, 4, 5 years, among others. So let's now lift this discussion beyond just bail, but to flash a light on our criminal justice system as a whole. Putting in context even the report that we are yet to get, but the likelihood of repeat offenders and such things, that casts a light on the criminal justice system. Where are we?
You know, the right debate that we should have as a country, even the president normally claims to be representing the grassroots people.
Yes.
Even if he wanted to debate bail, the debate he should have is how bail favors the rich. Because if you cannot afford a lawyer, if you cannot afford the bail money, it is highly unlikely that you will get bail. So the president as a leader of everybody, I think bail in Uganda, by the way it is
Structure.
yes, favors like 30% of our population.
That's even too high.
30% is too high.
Yes, maybe like 10%.
Yeah.
So the president should see how to change bail conditions to make sure it is accessible to all people that need it. Instead of fighting or bringing a debate that was resolved in 2015, you know, before he was even born. So the bail has those challenges. You need a lawyer, you need bail money in most cases. But Article 23(6) has provisions where court can base on to grant bail, even people who cannot afford lawyers. If you are on a minor offense and you spend 90 days in prison, that is Article 23(6), Clause 1. 90 days, 60 days. It is 60 days for minor offenses in prison without prosecution, you know, fixing hearing. Court can give you bail. Normally people call it court bond. So, but then in Clause 2, if you spend 120 days on a capital offense without prosecution of your case, court can also release you. These are provisions of our Constitution. This debate was concluded in 2015. We should not repeat it as a country. So where are the challenges of administration of justice in our criminal justice system? The biggest weakness is on the investigative side. And these are arms headed directly by the president. The investigative arm in this country is the police, commanded by the president. The police arrests people without evidence. Rugyendo hinted on 48 hours being enough. You know, the framers of the Constitution saw to that police can only arrest a person with reasonable evidence. Not on, you know, Monica is moving, you are under arrest. Then you go and you start on a fishing expedition of evidence. And this is what they are doing. That's why Rugyendo thinks 48 hours are not enough. But police is meant to first investigate and have at least prima facie evidence.
Actually, in the Nicholas Opio case, the judge made that point.
Yes, they are supposed to have prima facie evidence before arrest. With this evidence, you can arrest and charge. And maybe take another 1 week to conclude the gaps that you could be having. But the police dreams, then arrests. In the worst case scenario, they stage manage people. Stage manage somebody, we have a lot of people struggling. Promise you, even 20 million is enough, but I saw people who appeared with Karekio and then turned against him. When he was IGP, he had promised them 20 million on massacre killings in 2017, 2018. Then gave them some handouts at a hotel in Makinde, took them to Ruzira so that they can come and pin the people he wanted to arrest, whom he had dreamt about with no evidence. And then that's what happened on a press conference. So they dream that maybe this case, this person must be involved. Then they come and arrest. Zero evidence. They fail to find anything connecting you, they pay somebody. Yes, you came and told me you gave me even money to buy a panga and kill. That is not evidence you can adduce before any court worth its name. So that's why they are in panic over bail, because they do not have prima facie evidence. And that is the biggest problem that the president, as commander-in-chief, direct head of investigating arms, should focus on, other than taking us to the industrial debate of bail.
Thank you very much. And to you, I know that from where you sit, you could also help us flash a light on some of the gaps we have, where the discussion should actually be.
You see, if you followed the president carefully, he has almost indicted every agency of government.
Which he heads.
Which he heads.
So he should resign.
In fact, the president speaks like an outsider. He doesn't even speak as like the head of our government.
He's an activist.
Yeah, so in 2011, in fact, he behaves more like an NGO leader, an NGO activist. But seriously, in 2011, President Museveni ran his campaign against NADS.
Yes.
He went across the country complaining about NADS. Everything that had failed was because of some small boy, man or woman called the NADS coordinator. That's how he ran his campaign. But Ugandans were so gullible that we are not able to ask him, Mr. President, you are the leader of these things. What's your problem? The problem starts with you. If you have followed these annual reviews of performance reviews of government where he has cabinet, I think the one of I don't know if it's 2015 where he went or thereafter, he basically went and said, Minister of Education, Minister of Health, they have failed. Clear in a cabinet meeting, in a cabinet retreat.
And what action did he take?
Nothing.
He's advocating.
So basically, you will see the president.
Police.
You see. So the point I'm trying to make is that when you, the police, I mean, is there any event he has, or any address involving security where he has not told us how the police is incompetent, how they are corrupt, how they are what? And you know, for me, it baffles me that Ugandans will accept this narrative from a president, and the president externalizes every problem that we face as a people. For him, he's the smart guy. He's the guy who's doing things. In fact, he's doing a lot. It is all of us who are not doing anything. So he externalizes every problem. And I think that even with this bail thing, he's trying to externalize, because the population is feeling the pressure. If you have a situation in Masaka where ordinary people are being killed left, right, and center, and you can't explain why, then you externalize the problem. So the problem is the judiciary, which is releasing people. He's not telling us why he commands security forces that cannot protect the people. So the problem is the judiciary. I actually think that if you look at his scheme, the way he does his things, my view is that even the president may be trying to divert us from something that we haven't figured out. Maybe Rugyendo may even know. Because
I don't sleep in his bedroom.
every time he wants to do something.
You are snoops.
In most cases, something that is outrageous, like those constitution amendments when he was changing the constitution to contest.
Brought the land first.
He brings something, so he brings land. And he knows that Ugandans, land is a charged subject. So he normally knows it cannot go through. Even a bail, I am sure he knows that however gullible the NRM MPs can be, I would be completely shocked if they went and voted to amend the Bill of Rights of the Constitution. I mean, that would be the biggest shocker because NRM MPs can do so many things. Monica, you know them very well. They can do all kinds of outrageous
It will
things.
not end at the caucus. It
Yeah.
will come to Parliament and go to a legal committee, which has lawyers.
No, you see, when it has
appalling.
it has happened,
But haven't they done it before?
that's the point. Whenever it has
That's
happened,
a good question.
whenever it has happened, it actually takes the same trajectory. In fact, it starts by the president denying it. Then he owns it. Because it normally starts with the caucus. Then the president denies. Then he owns. Then it goes to parliament. And then eventually he owns it. So I am thinking, I am very, very curious. Because as Sarah said, this debate about the bail is the list of our problems.
Right now.
Right now. If you consider the fact that we have kids that are out of school because of
For
COVID
2 years.
for 2 years,
Double teenage pregnancy.
and that a serious president,
Yeah.
a serious president
comfortable.
would be seated there with his cabinet 24/7 figuring
Very
out
tough.
how do we get our kids to school. If you think of the crisis that our economy is facing, that all these multinational companies are exiting.
But the Minister of Education attended the caucus.
The Minister of Education, who is the minister?
Honorable Janet.
Right.
In which capacity now?
I don't know.
I think that she was
not an
playing
But she's
well.
from your village. How can you not know her?
No, I pay
She was
very little
playing
attention
trust
about
duty- I mean, state duty
ministers,
roles.
about Ugandan ministers. But the point I'm trying to make, if you consider the nature of the crisis that we face as a country, and then the president, instead of directing us to discussing and resolving the problem, whether it is the police, the capability of the police to investigate crime. By the way, in other jurisdictions, detect and prevent. In other jurisdictions, in countries where governments respect their people, the police must even get a court order to arrest you.
Fast.
They don't just go and pick the way we are picked like grasshoppers.
Where they respect personal liberty.
Where they respect personal liberty, the police will go to a judge, sometimes in the chamber, we call it a chamber application. They present their evidence. They say, we have this case against Monicah Amoding. Based on this and this and this, we think that she committed this crime. They seek an order to arrest. The idea that Ugandans can just be picked on the street, arrested in the manner that our security forces arrest them, I think is quite outrageous. Yeah. And the president needs to understand that these things will come back to haunt him. Because you see, he went on Ben Chwanka lecture, and a man who was persecuted for standing up against abuse of human rights, and then started projecting and articulating these ideas that for me sound crazy. That I think it's a desecration of the day, the memorial day of Chwanka, that you can go to his memorial lecture and start talking about how you need to remove bail.
Yeah, because it's a symbol of personal liberty.
Absolutely. So I really would want to appeal to the president and those who work with him, the guys in the NRM caucus, and say they need to help our president. I think our president must be suffering from maybe the pressures of age and the pressures of being in office. You know that he has never taken leave from office. My view is that he may be suffering from a lot of pressures and therefore beginning to approach things in a way that really sounds quite bizarre. This one, I think he needs a lot of help because if he doesn't, we've seen people in his position, having been in power for 30, 40 years, they really end badly.
The question, Godber, I always
and,
put to the resident discussants in the
yes,
show.
Yeah, so maybe as you bring that question,
Yeah.
I would also propose the
Is
question
the role
to
of the
answer.
citizenry, because now it looks like the law is going to come back to Parliament, and then Parliament will lock itself away and try to do something, an absurdity. Even now, as they go to consult, we did that in the recent Tojkwatako thing, you remember? That people went to consult, but came back with contrary views and went ahead and legislated. So in this scenario, they may go to the people still and come back with...
But they selected under what conditions?
But Monica,
remember there was a military raid. So there was a military raid on the temple of democracy.
Actually, that is really the point. That right now, if you think of this country, we are living under a military dictatorship because the military has taken over every aspect of society. I like giving the example of these physical spaces for civic expression. That the constitutional square, which is supposed to be the epitome of freedom, has been taken over by the security forces. It's under occupation. Kororo ceremonial grounds turns into a military garrison. Makerere University Freedom Square is enclosed. You have to ask for permission to enter. I don't know how Ugandans want to describe a military coup. Every other public space in this country is occupied by military installations with all those battle wagons. I don't know whether I have argued that for me, President Museveni and his security forces have redefined the meaning of a coup in a country.
Yeah.
So this is a country that is living under a military dictatorship. It's a coup. So the citizens we are talking about, normally when they are threatened with violence, one of the forms of resistance is withdrawal. When that violence accumulates beyond the bottleneck, then you can easily have crisis that we have seen in many other parts of the world.
Godber, I can assure you that the Citizens Chat show is not
It's the one place to engage.
It's not a thunder.
At least it's not under.
For now.
For now.
For now, we can only think of how long you
The good thing is that Godber can...
No, I have information in the form of a question for Godber. Godber, recently, the Constitutional Court, in Oraro Tunu case on police summons, has ruled that police does not need to summon people and take statements if they think they have findings that somebody has committed a crime. They can proceed and charge without even statements. And this constitutional decision was not challenged by Attorney General. There is no appeal. So even it goes, like the man of arrests, the Constitutional Court has ruled that they are not even necessary. Even in criminal cases, once you have sufficient evidence that a citizen has committed a crime, proceed, take your evidence to court, prosecute, court will look for the person.
The court order.
But you see, Rugyendo mentioned something which most of the people who subscribe to this junta normally like. They will tell you that Godber at least has the freedom to speak. I find, it's so insulting.
So they want to define
Africa. So one of the tragedies of this continent of Africa is where I think that surviving is good enough. That you wake up every morning and you find yourself alive and you are surprised. So it's like you are surprised that you are alive. You are surprised you are out of jail. You are surprised nobody is hunting for you. So that's the tragedy of this continent. And I always tell my audiences that freedom is what unleashes the ingenuity of a people. The moment you constrain freedom, like in our environment, you've basically diminished the ability to think and innovate. So the effect of lack of freedom is felt in the economy, is felt in science and technology. Rugyendo, we're going to teach our kids math, science and whatever, and STEM. But because the kids at home, they know that their parents, they are not sure whether their parents will come back home. That STEM will not help them much because there is no freedom, which is the necessary precondition to innovate.
Thank you, Godber. Honorable Monicah, Sarah here has brought an interesting dimension about arrests and their manner. And you see, we are discussing bail at a time when 2 members of parliament were released on bail, and they could barely walk a few meters beyond the gates.
Beyond the gates.
And this is not the first time. This has now become like a norm. you're now sure immediately you get the bail. I don't know, I think people are going to start getting creative on how to be lifted away.
After getting bail, you jump the fence.
So, yes.
Or you have a helper on.
You have a helper.
Yeah, so one could think that maybe the executive has even a way around bail, because it seems like they don't even care about the bail.
The whole thing speaks to the breakdown of our systems as a country, like Godber observed earlier. And of course, the judiciary is not an exemption.
Yeah.
The three arms of government seem to have, I note that the Chief Justice was saying they need to work in harmony, but it seems as though that they are totally, there's an appendage of executive with the judiciary, because orders come from the executive to the judiciary, which is supposed to say...
But is that a violation of their independence?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is a collapse of the systems. And of course, Ugandans now seem to be accepting the status quo. You saw the drama that happened with the rearrest of Segirinya. Because he knew there was going to be another arrest, he was scheming with the MP who went to pick him, his lawyer, Shamim. And when you could look at that, of course, those sins are common in most of these political arrests and cases. That's what happens. Someone is given bail, and then a few meters away from the court of justice, actually, or even the prison, where he has been, released from, he's rearrested a few meters away. So Law Society has talked about it. The lawyers have talked against this over and again. But it seems as though the executive seems to continue using its power beyond against all the other arms of government.
It's impunity.
It is impunity of the highest order. And for me, as a Ugandan now who keeps at least raising my voice once in a while here and there on these excesses, I seem to be also looking at it from another angle that, Ugandans, the role of the citizens in this whole conversation. Of course, when the gun is a bit louder than, the law, people seem to, retract and hide away from, public engagement. But this is an area where we have to keep talking and also do something other than, some people, of course, will go and tweet away and do the other. The members of parliament are coming for a consultation. That is an opportunity to engage with them. But having done that as well, we should be able to follow up, engage further than the members of parliament, because even us, members of parliament, disappoint the public a lot of times. And the rearrests certainly is an excess, and no judicial practitioner or the legal practitioners would accept that kind of status quo. I don't know, maybe Godber calls it the junta.
Has an explanation.
For them, it is a normalized practice.
And Rugyendo agreed with me in private.
He did
Blackmail. I need protection. That's blackmail.
are not certainly acceptable. It's an excess from the executive, because even then, these drones, we see them all the time, and you don't know where they come from, where they end up.
Yes, exactly.
And I belong to the Human Rights Committee for a long time in Parliament, and we would go and examine and see where people end up. And it is appalling that in these custody places where these people are kept for some time, a lot of human rights abuse happens.
And you were powerless, you couldn't do anything.
So I'm actually going to have each one of you having a say on this, because it's apparently a very serious issue. But
I have a question for Honorable Amoding.
Yeah.
Okay.
As a member of NRM, but a senior member to that.
Senior member.
And,
The senior liberal
and
member.
also her experience as a legislator. There is talk. The usual talk from NRM is that we are in power, we are in charge, the people have said. In these last elections, and maybe Godber should also help me, the results announced by the Chairman Electoral Commission at swearing in for this term, we are 5.9, about their million.
Yeah.
The Electoral Commission website has since changed. They are now at 6.1. And I'm wondering whether they've continued tabulating results beyond swearing in. I really, I keep getting bothered when I check their website and figures are changing. But even after changing
We are
figures,
discovering a few votes that had been misplaced.
so are they doing, who ordered the recount? Because a recount after announcement can only be ordered by court.
Yeah.
So what are they doing? I think we need to
Investigate.
Yes, but out of this, even if they've exaggerated the figures, 6.1, Monica, your party, got a third, exactly a third after exaggeration. Before exaggeration, they were less than a third of registered voters because we have 8.1 million registered voters. So the score of NRM party in this stand
Has gone up.
was slightly below a third at the time of swearing in. Normally you talk with arrogance of numbers. Which numbers and which people?
Well, the questions from Sarah, you can never be sure what questions she's going to ask.
How does that come
And
into
you know,
The which people are demanding
I am
for,
hoping you are not
repeal
asking
of
Monica to answer this question.
6.1?
Which people?
This one should go
Honorable Monica, if you need my protection.
Neither will Rugyendo answer the
This one
question
needs
probably.
the chairperson of the caucus.
If you need
Honorable
my,
Todong perhaps would be
if you
the
need
best.
my protection from
Well,
this
I
question,
will need that protection
I'm happy
from
to
Sarah.
extend it.
Okay, but she can share her view.
Yeah.
Well, I have been officially, I shared my position on the last election in several spaces.
Yeah.
Of course, having participated in it and been a victim of it as well. I think that I have less to talk about it as an election that can be lauded and
Can be relied upon.
and relied upon to,
Yes,
to
yes.
say it was a good election, because the conduct of the election itself happened in the COVID, SOPs which were overly, abused and used by the, other parties to get a win. So I think it's a discussion we cannot even have. And we noted in the earlier discussions that every election of Uganda from 1996, actually 2001, has ended up in courts of law in terms of contestation. And I think, in my view, the latest was the worst since 1986, this government. I believe that there are many lessons that the country can learn from this last election. But certainly elections, Mr. Rugyendo, have a bearing on how governance later on, and of course the respect of human rights depend on the legibility of the government that is put in place. And so if the government has come in ways that are very unclear, you certainly do not expect our democracy to be at its best. And that is what we are seeing, that, well, when there is a high challenge, a greater challenge, a political force coming from another section, I think the powers that want to, utilize the law will always come and use the excesses, as we are seeing.
Okay, thank you very much. Now you'll allow me go back to the discussion on these arrests that happened just outside court premises or premises of detention centers, and possibly Rugyendo can help us get the understanding.
Well, for me,
behind.
I think from the point of view of criminality, let me probably get it that way. Law enforcement agencies will act in a manner depending on the nature of crime and the predisposition of suspects in the process, and sometimes, actually, if not very many times, the law enforcement agencies have really gone overboard in most of these cases. Even in our case, in my case, for example, really, some of the actions that we witnessed during our arrests, were overboard, and we had to protest. So I think there is a problem. There is a mismatch between what really the spirit of the state, of the law enforcement agencies should be, and the actors themselves, and why those who act in excess are not reprimanded, even internally or even externally, is something I don't understand about this society. I have a feeling about this society, really. No, I have a feeling that for example, a member of parliament, if somebody should really be able to summon in case there is a problem, in case you have something against them.
Every citizen should be summoned.
Let's just put it at that level, because sometimes if you arrest a rebel, really, you don't have, for example, you don't have the luxury to first discuss about how best do you arrest somebody you found shooting another. The situation will determine the enforcement. But in this case, at the courts of law, is something I don't understand, because I think it is important. It is important that to understand that if our country has probably the best law enforcement or security forces probably in the region, it is important to understand that probably a man like Segirinya will not run away from anywhere. Mm-hmm. It is possible that you can be able to track them down wherever they are if you have fresh charges and get them, instead of embarrassing yourself in front of court. That is something that tells me that there's probably something we don't understand, because, and for me, it comes from the issue of information, and this is why probably I have an issue.
Classified,
no, I did not interrupt. Can I explain my point?
Yeah, please.
I have been put on spot.
Yes, I have extremely. I've had an issue.
Yes.
I've had an issue with the state when it comes to explaining its case, because it's so easy. I'll give an example like Rwanda. People will say that country is brutal. Yes, maybe no. But if they arrest Sarah immediately, they are going to explain. They will tell you, we are doing this and this, and because we are sure that Sarah has been involved in 1, 2, 3, or 3, 4, 5 things. This does not happen.
Well, Afande Nanga is always...
Just a moment. It comes, yes, it comes. For the avoidance of doubt. But you see, there is a crowd that shrouds genuine information that should come out and stop people from speculation. Because, frankly, I would want to imagine that the president, especially in this issue, in this debate, and I will insist to the lawyers here, that there's nothing that should not be debatable. People should be allowed to discuss. If a president and his few people that you call people
actually the president called it a historical, ideological,
are not comfortable.
Are
not comfortable with the way.
Just a moment.
Are not comfortable with the way. If a section, of our society is not comfortable with the way the justice system is being dispensed, you should allow them to have a say. That's why there's this discussion. That's why there's that consultation. Let it go. Let it fall flat. There's nothing wrong with it. That's what democracy is all about. Some people don't want to keep quiet if they feel that there is a problem with this system. But you're not going to just keep hiding under the law just because some things are not changeable. I don't agree with that. Let people discuss. Let people be ashamed if they are wrong, and we move on. I have no problem with that. But my biggest problem with the NRM is information. For example, the president has been coming up with these arguments, but I don't see if there has been a process. For example, was there, for example, a discussion with the senior people
within the organs of the NRM,
in the judiciary, for example? Do we have a report?
NRM discussing with
the
internally? For
example, has the president maybe interfaced with the judicial officers to understand? To justify his issue, his argument? Has he interfaced with the law enforcement agencies to understand why probably they could be the ones pushing him to not allow certain key people whom they call repeat offenders, for example, to keep roaming in the streets? Where is this?
Are you suggesting that you should interfere?
No,
with the
interface. I said interface.
Okay.
Because you see, as a fountain of honor,
what do you
I have a feeling.
What do you mean fountain of honor?
I have a feeling. It's an issue. For me, I voted. My vote is just one. But I don't understand. I wouldn't want to say that the Electoral Commission, in its right mind, did not decide this election. Whatever happened, we have a government.
The Electoral Commission to
whatever happened. I did not say that.
It's the people.
I did not say that.
The people to decide.
I did not say that. I said the Electoral Commission decided based on what? On what they received, and we have a government in place. So once you have a government in place, I have a feeling that the fountain of honor, once he has his own issues to bring across to the, but you people I was telling this time.
No, you need to explain.
I don't like this. I don't like this hooliganism.
Let him run. Let him
I
run.
want an overnight person. What is it?
If you don't understand English, then you have a problem.
I'm a listener to this.
I need to be protected from this hooliganism.
Struggling to deliver some point. Let's give him
I need
the
to be
space.
protected from this.
Okay.
I need to be protected from this hooliganism.
Yeah,
Let this
you're
Sarah says
protected.
Let
terrorists.
this hooligan keep quiet now.
Yoweri Museveni is a citizen of this country
Yes.
who can raise any issue, just like you and me, okay? And they must be heard, in my view, they must be heard. The challenge I have with what is happening with this debate is that there's not so much background information that is being given. I don't see the justification. What is the justification? Whatever
What
seems
is
to be,
the problem?
listen,
It should not
whatever
also
seems to be
dictate.
coming out, whatever seems to be coming out doesn't seem to be very much convincing. I want them to do so much, to go that extra mile and convince the country that it is important to take this direction because we have these facts. These facts, we've not been able to see them. You're asking what we should do. I think that's what should happen. We need more information. Let the CID, let the prosecution, the DPP, really be open about some of these things so that we understand. For example, at the time when these people were being rearrested, if I should say, somebody has called it kidnap, but when they were being rearrested, at that point in time, the country is in a blackout. You just can't understand why is somebody being all of a sudden picked up and arrested.
By who did?
And the phone
We should have understood at some point, in my view, that while these people are getting bail, we have these fresh charges. It is important in a democracy to be very, very open, in my view. Because then you stop speculation. What is happening in this discussion is that the state is being looked at as probably as a terrorist, as people who abuse human rights, who don't understand that it is important to summon citizens through the due process. And now everybody thinks we are dealing with a junta, we are dealing with a mad state, a rogue state. Why does this is really sometimes what shocks me? Because why does the state, the NRM, allow itself to be perceived that way? As a
Why
rogue
does
state?
this act rogue?
No. There's acting rogue
And be perceived as
and be perceived as one.
So
the
you
two
think-
things are
so
different.
you think
because
that-
like I've said,
you
the
think
nature of the
that-
crime.
just a moment.
The nature of the crime will determine the reaction, the way you respond. For example, if I found you shooting innocent people, and I'm probably I'm a law enforcement, I might be forced to shoot you there and then. Because why are you shooting people? I might shoot you so that you don't continue harming other people.
Yeah.
But somebody will argue from a human rights point of view.
No. That's
Just
not
a moment. Wait a moment. We'll argue that, I did not give you a hearing why you are shooting these people.
That's different.
That's
No.
different, Rugyendo.
The point I'm raising,
you're
just a
bastardizing
moment.
the
Just a moment.
discussion.
The point I'm raising is that the response sometimes is determined by the nature of the crime. So why is that high-handedness? Why doesn't the state
Explain
tell
to
us
us.
what kind of this crime that requires this huge amount of force?
And,
When actually it is possible that you
Yeah,
invite
just
Amoding to come
invite,
for a
yeah.
discussion. Come CID, you are in Parliament, there is even a police station at Parliament. You say, you order the OC station there and the OC CID at Parliament and say, these fellows have this, can you invite them after the session? So that there is a
Well, I would
dignified way
speak to that.
of doing things, and then you stop all this speculation. What I think
Yeah, finally.
the debate
at this
has,
point.
why the debate has become bastardized, and probably we've lost an opportunity to understand that we have probably a criminal crisis at our hands, is that the state has allowed to be dragged along rogue lines because they've failed to explain certain actions when they actually can explain them.
So
Like
you
before I
think
came
that
here, when I was
the
told,
action-
for example, there are certain things I cannot reveal here. Just a moment. Because of
Yeah,
the
please
subject
land on
of the
this
sub
issue,
judice,
Sarah.
sub judice rule,
In
I
Latin.
would not. There are certain things I would not say. When I was told about this discussion from a journalistic point of view, I had to ask around. Ask even some of these law enforcement people. But I said, but you people, tell me, these are not these are not cantankerous people like Sawanyan and others. And this man, even the other day, I contributed some cement to his hospital, Segiri. These don't seem to be like
a Shabab.
Like the kinds of people that you really should really.
But have you looked at their charge sheet?
Just a moment. Just a moment. I am coming to that. so when I ask those questions, so this guy says to me, but Rugyendo, you just wait for us at the hearing. I said, really?
Okay.
So do you have evidence? And no, it's this thing, by the time we reach this extent,
It is not a question of evidence, actually.
We've started investigating. But the
It's
point
not
is,
a question of evidence.
just a moment. No, wait.
No,
Wait.
that's the
This
man
is
who
not.
has the point.
This is not. Sarah. This is not
These
activism.
things are not
Rugyendo,
easy.
I'm
This is not activism.
No, we are discussing the law.
I'm trying to put
not a
myself in the
question
hands
of
of the
evidence.
state. I am not a state actor,
I'm getting
but I'm trying
impatient.
to understand where
Kindly
the
run
NRM
in
is
like
coming
30
from.
seconds,
And saying, because they have this opportunity, they have the advantage of information, like these guys who talked to me before I came here. Because this was
they're
me just
incapable
trying
of
to
explaining
understand,
the
to
situation.
get the context. They have the advantage. Explain, because we are dealing with a population that is cynical, that does not trust even the election, like you just mentioned here, that does not trust the political dispensation. You have very senior people here who call this government a junta, and they are, they live happily, they are drinking coffee, that's the point we're talking about. Explain to them, because it's their freedom.
Okay.
It's their freedom even to call you a junta. There's no problem with it. It's their freedom to
Fair enough.
Yes,
So for me,
Mr. Moderator.
for me,
Fair
the
enough.
discussion,
Fair enough.
just a moment, the discussion,
Fair enough.
the discussion,
Yes. 20
the
seconds.
debate in town should spotlight the failure by the state to wriggle itself
Communicate.
out of this crisis and communicate properly and be on top of it. But
Okay.
right now,
Yes.
they've lost the narrative.
Thank you very
in my
much.
view.
Yeah.
Until maybe the competent, we call them competent courts of law,
No.
prove that actually these
Thank
people
you.
committed this.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to Sarah, and just to remind you, Rugyendo
Sarah
almost
keeps
got us
interrupting
lost.
me. Now I want to start interrupting.
It
We
was
are discussing
diverting
the
the
issue of the
discussion.
Rearrest.
Yes.
And
Mr.
that's where
Moderator,
it
I'm
went.
on focus.
And I stated
I'm on
there.
focus, and I
Yes,
want to start
and-
from where Rugyendo has.
Yes, because
though
he
he has
seems to say
taken.
But
they
you
are
are a
okay.
dictator.
Too
You
much
don't
time.
allow the easy flow of. You don't allow the moderator. You tell him what to say.
Please.
This is
We have
unacceptable.
lost time.
My summary of what Bishop has, circuited around delivering is that.
It was a long
It was a wrong summary.
Yeah, he believes that the actions of the regime are not wrong, but are just not
They are
well
not
explained.
explaining.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, yeah.
I want to respond to issues just for the benefit of viewers' understanding. Because I know Rugyendo as a senior journalist in this country and a communication specialist. He understands what the problem is, but he's
not in my
completely
head.
trying to derail
was
the
deliberate
debate.
in making
Yeah,
it wrong.
deliberately diverting. So,
You don't understand
yes,
him.
there are two issues.
Yes.
One issue the citizens should understand is that the opposite of rule of law is anarchy. So either we should work for rule of law,
Oh, we have an
or we have anarchy and we shall all be victims of anarchy.
We go down.
Nobody's safe
course I agree with
in
you.
a situation of
including
anarchy.
the perpetrators of the anarchy.
The second point I want to put forward to our viewers is that the rearrest of MPs cannot be justified. And it was clear even yesterday in Parliament. The Prime Minister failed to explain. The Attorney General could not even construct any right sentence.
He was talking in tongues.
No, he made a legal
Like
scandal in
Rugyendo.
Parliament. He could not explain.
Speaking English.
So, even if there is additional evidence of any person already charged in court, the prosecution can amend a charge sheet even on the first day of hearing.
That's what I've said.
The prosecution can amend a charge sheet even after 1 year. So long as hearing is not complete, so long as the sentence has not been delivered, a charge sheet can be amended. So to say that he has consulted with police and there is information we don't know is total rubbish. The people are in court. They were charged with murdering 4 people. I'm told Alan Sewanyana has a 5th person. Rubbish. You amend the charge sheet and add your evidence. There is a charge of terrorism. It is a capital offense. The measure is the same. The procedure is the same. Amend a charge sheet. You do not rearrest. This is anarchy and undefensible. That's why the people who need Museveni regime could not explain themselves.
So in your view, is it that they don't know
What
this
to
procedure?
say or
These
to
are
No,
very-
But you see, that's the point I was raising.
They know.
Yeah, that is
They needed to.
They know. And they know that there is no need to rearrest an already charged person. You simply update the charge sheet.
amend it.
You don't rearrest. So citizens should not be told the lies that there is another person Sewanyana killed. No way.
absolutely
You
nonsense.
just amend the charge sheet. You do not rearrest. So even those that you claim were giving you evidence are giving you falsehoods that cannot stand a day in a legal argument.
Well, I
The-
cannot
the-
judge
the
them.
argument-
I cannot judge them.
The argument
But I
that
will not
Rugyendo
so-
makes
so-
is
so-
that failure to communicate is the problem.
But how
It
do
is
you
not
communicate
actually-
evil?
How do you
These are
communicate?
evil intentions. that
Okay,
I have
okay,
said.
of the
okay.
president.
There is.
That's your view.
Yeah, dear
that's the
panelists,
view, I think.
there is a point he made in the
Yeah.
beginning of his submission that there seems to be no coordination
Yeah.
between the agencies.
I think,
So-
Matanda,
Yes.
you need to, I think we need to emphasize Sarah's point.
Please.
The lack of coordination is itself a manifestation of anarchy.
Yes.
So there is no difference. And you see, Rugyendo, if you want to understand the nature of our crisis, you listen to Rugyendo, juxtapose the state and NRM. So he talks about these two as if they are one and the same thing.
But NRM is the party.
No,
in
so,
power now.
so let me explain to you, Monica.
Yes.
The crisis that we are facing as a country right now is that the state and government of Uganda have been captured by a cult organization called NRM.
Well,
When a political
That I
party, I want our listeners to understand, when a political party wins an election, it forms government.
Government.
It does not become the government. The political party remains there and it influences the government on how it runs because it is pursuing, the government should be pursuing the agenda of the political party. Nor does the government become the state.
it's a question of semantics.
Yeah, you see the
There's a
fact
real
that
difference. Frankly speaking.
yeah, the fact that you are talking about semantics, the moment you have these fused, you have anarchy. The fact that when President Museveni meets the NRM caucus, he cannot identify whether he's talking to them as chairman NRM or whether he's talking to them as an individual citizen, because you said he has views,
Bazukuru.
or whether he's talking to them as president of Uganda, is bad enough for this country
My dear Bazukuru.
that you can only begin to see anarchy. And there is a great writer who said that when the government fears people, there is liberty. When people fear government, there is tyranny. But for Uganda, the problem is that government and people fear each other. That's why you have anarchy.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's where you have anarchy.
If
So
they fear each
the cases of rearrest that we are seeing is really
They
the
don't
problem.
trust the government.
Yeah, the problem that we have is that within the junta, and in most cases, these are not the institutions of state, because they are very, very professional, disciplined people in the Uganda police, in the UPDF, in our intelligence services. The problem is that when you have a crisis that we have, there are individual operatives who they form a mindset, they make a decision, we want to arrest Monicah. Once they have made that decision, the question of procedure does not arise.
Or what has she committed?
Or what she has
come
committed
after
is an
Afterthought.
afterthought. So that's the crisis that we are dealing with, and I see, you see that's why I've said, when you have a country where a head of state can come on a TV and address the public and begin to justify why the security forces should have gone on the street and killed the people. And as a people, we accept it. Then some of the people like the Rugyendos cheer. Then you know you have a crisis as a country. And it doesn't matter which your political color is, your ethnicity, your gender. It doesn't really matter. There must be certain things that outrage us as a people. Yeah? the fact that
The minimum standards.
yeah, there must be certain minimum standards of human decency, of human dignity, that even when Sarah belongs to a different political formation or a different ethnic group, and she's mistreated, each one of us as citizens should be outraged. I think that the NRM people should be outraged that Alan and Segrinya were rearrested in the manner
Brutally.
that they were rearrested. No matter their crimes, by the way. No matter their crimes. I think it's outrageous that anybody who claims to put on our military or police uniform can behave in a manner of arresting any individual. No, even if they were not MPs, by the way. There should be no individual who should be arrested that, because if that's the case, then we know when there are terrorist operations. Yeah, if it is a case of terrorism, I expect the security forces to be able to deploy the highest form of capability that they have to deal with that matter. But we're not dealing with cases of terrorism.
The question on where we started, I was just wondering, you stated the fusion. You said part of the crisis is a fusion between the NRM and government and the state.
Yeah.
But here is a president justifying his position before a caucus of NRM.
Yeah.
And on the first instance, they have disagreed with him. That doesn't look like fusion. It looks
no, what I'm saying is that when he went to the caucus, did he go as president of Uganda? Did he go as chairman of NRM? Did he go as an individual citizen? Because my friend Rugyendo there is saying that the president is also a citizen. He has opinions, which is okay.
It's okay.
But when he addressed the caucus, was he addressing the caucus as an individual citizen, as an individual member of NRM?
Let's assume all those.
Yeah?
All the three.
All the three.
So all the three, when those come, then I say, Mr. President, you have failed in your job of running the country, because the reason people are being given bail is because that's what our law says. As a president, your job number one is to protect the law.
rights,
Is to protect and defend that constitution. Your only record is that for the last 25 years, your record has been that you've been dismantling this constitution.
Whenever it gets in
your way, and this is what you are doing. Two, I would say, if you come as president, I would say, no, Mr. President, the problem is not the judges. The problem is that you have failed to build a competent police force with the necessary infrastructure to investigate crime and gather evidence. That you failed to capacitate the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecutions, because the Director of Public Prosecutions should have the competencies to evaluate the evidence and say, the moment I sign on the file, there is a case to be prosecuted in court. I would say that, Mr. President, you have failed for almost close to 35 years. You failed to build a competent judiciary, properly manned and resourced to be able to expeditiously try cases. So I would say you have failed, Mr. President. You are part of the problem. So you need to begin to be part of the solution rather than externalizing this problem and say that everybody else is wrong. For you are right.
Thank you very much. This discussion is very interesting.
Isn't that what happened at Koro, in my view? When his position was rejected.
You could make that part of your parting shot, because we have run out of time. And I want now to allow each one of us less than a minute to just make our parting shot.
Well, a discussion that has Godber and Sarah and then Rugyendo can never come to an end.
So possibly let me start with them and you see.
Well, I can start
such
because
that we end or no.
I think Godber's actually made his parting shots. Perhaps
let him go.
Yeah, let's start with you, Godber.
No, you really, my parting shot is to say that my parting shot is really to say, actually, it is really to address Ugandans like you and me to say we need to get back and reclaim our country, because our country has been actually stolen from us right now. Yeah, we need to get back. We need to understand that the president is another human being like each one of us. The only difference between us and the president is that we have given him responsibility and a mandate to do certain things on our behalf. We need to understand that the proposal to remove bail is to expose every individual citizen to the harassment by the regime at its leisure. We need to understand that. We need to understand that the provisions in the Constitution, there's a reason why they are in the Bill of Rights, the presumption of innocence, the right to apply for bail. The reason that they are in the Bill of Rights is that nobody should just change them at their wish. So we need to be able to mobilize ourselves and call our MPs and talk to them when they come back to the constituency for consultation. We need to tell them, you need to protect us.
And
yourselves.
And yourselves
Actually, they should
as
protect themselves
citizens,
first.
so that you don't just go and continue mutilating our constitution and removing all the safeguards that the framers put there to protect innocent Ugandans.
Thank you very much. Sarah, less than a minute.
I will be very brief. The debate
The best
on
way to
bail.
take long is to say I'll be very brief.
The debate on bail was concluded in 1215.
Very good.
This is pre-industrial era.
Yeah.
We are in a fourth industrial revolution. Our president should table innovative ideas
Yes.
fit to take Uganda
purpose.
in the fourth industrial revolution
Yeah.
like the rest of the countries.
Fourth.
Last
Very
sentence.
good point.
A courageous citizen
Yeah.
does not need weapons, but they may need bail. And that's why each time opposition members are arrested in this country, the president revives this debate.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you
Rugyendo.
very much. I want to agree with the discussants, the panelists, sorry,
That's encouraging.
about the issue for removal of bail. You know, this is not something that really should even be thought about
Considered, yeah.
or even considered. I think I'm also sending my message out there because not because I've been a beneficiary of bail, but you know, I have seen from my experience where so many people are on remand in some of our prisons, and some have been charged wrongly. There's one case of a driver of the former Chief Justice who was convicted for and spent 22 years in jail.
42.
22.
Wow.
And he was found
Innocent.
after 22 years. I met him one time, that gentleman. So these are some of the things why the Bill of Rights, really like somebody is arguing, should not even be tampered with. But for me, as somebody who really believes in relativism, no debate should be stifled, in my view. No single debate should be stifled. Let's use this opportunity, you Ugandans and the rest of the right-thinking members of society, use this opportunity to expose the president and say, look, you are wrong, but don't say he should not even talk about it. And I want to challenge those that we really want to believe in his line and come up with very watertight justifications for this argument, for this debate. And then all of us shall be able to have a country that is safe, that is open for everybody, where no one is victimized. And we should also not forget that, everybody is a candidate of prison at one point or another.
Especially the...
And
Especially the three of them.
For me, I have been there, I have experience, especially Sarah
And Godber.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Honorable, you have the
Mine is
last-
an appeal.
Those are implied
actually.
threats from Rugyendo.
I think that the conversation of bail certainly is not an exclusion, to Uganda alone. Of course, we wouldn't want to say that Uganda at this point in time should be an exception to the global discussion and entitlements that every human being has. And I think that the president needs to be counseled to know that when you make mistakes when you're a young man like Rugyendo and others, they can easily be forgiven. But when mistakes are made at old age, those cannot be forgiven because it's expected that you have learned through experience and he's been in this system for quite a long time. And now the move to go to the minimum basics, minimum standards. You see the other political issues we've had a conversation on and he has gotten away with it and all that. But now on individual rights of people, minimum standards, I think that's a conversation that the president, the members of parliament need to advise him to really, not to dictate, actually to abandon, because then he will have served his, title of an elder, as he says, even in politics, because this...
For the one of Fountain of Honor.
Of Fountain of Honor, as Rugyendo says.
And loves that
So
one.
it is my appeal that members of parliament would reject this discussion and leave the Bill of Rights in our constitution watertight. And also the conversation, like Godber says, should be continued by the citizens. But above all, the president, who is the initiator, should not dictate on members of parliament on this particular decision, because it's about the power of parliament to make law, but also informed by the citizens who have collectively put their rights together for them to
Thank you very
protect.
much, Sarah.
Over time, media has, the public has come to know that there are people who have been sentenced to death for having murdered people who are alive. And later the people are seen alive. One man spent 20 years in prison for having murdered another. 20 years later, the alleged murdered person was seen walking. So we have had many victims. Yes, but also the recent political victims. Some people were charged with murder among the PRA case, People's Redemption Army case, that they murdered somebody in Arua. It was discovered 16 years later that actually nobody was murdered, and they were in jail. Such kind of injustices are only
cannot be repaired.
Cured by remedies like bail.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It has been an insightful discussion. In his first interview as a former Chief Justice, Bart Katurebe stated that the beauty about human rights is that you never know when you need them. And so it's a conversation that everyone needs to pay attention to and that everyone needs to fight for. You have heard the citizens. This is the Citizen Chat Show. You have been good viewers. Please bring in your comments on YouTube, on Twitter, and let's keep the conversation going. Till next week.